Sometimes the people we trust most are the ones who leave us in our darkest hours. And sometimes, the silence they leave behind speaks louder than any goodbye. Hello, my dear friends. This is Nana from Nana Heart Story. Thank you for being here with me today. If you love real-life stories told from the heart, don't forget to subscribe. It means the world to me. Now, let's begin today's story. My name is Clara, and this story begins on a day every girl dreams about, my wedding day. The sun over Savannah, Georgia, was warm and golden, painting the world in that soft light that makes everything look like a promise. I remember how the white roses on the porch smelled so pure, how the lace of my gown shimmered in the mirror, and how my mother whispered, "Sweetheart, you deserve all the happiness in the world." I believed her. I truly did, because that morning, I thought I had it all. A man who said he loved me, a family that had gathered to bless us, and a future waiting like an open door. His name was Ethan, a quiet man with kind blue eyes and a voice that always sounded like calm after a storm. When he looked at me during our vows, I felt the world pause for a second. But looking back now, I realize sometimes the world pauses right before it falls apart. The ceremony was beautiful. Everyone said we looked perfect together. People clinked their glasses, laughter filled the air, and the small town church echoed with joy. But there was something about Ethan that day, something I couldn't name. His smile didn't reach his eyes. His hands trembled when he held mine for the photos. I asked if he was all right, and he said, "Just tired. Honey, it's been a long day." I let it go. Love makes you trust what your heart wants to hear, not what your eyes see. When evening came, we drove to our little countryside inn, a cozy old place, surrounded by tall oak trees, where the cicadas sang, and the porch light glowed like a lantern of hope. The owner, an older woman named Mrs. Caldwell, welcomed us warmly. She smiled and said, "Newlyweds always bring good energy to this place." I smiled back, but Ethan barely looked up. He was distant, distracted, like his mind was already somewhere else. We had dinner in silence. I tried to talk about our honeymoon plans, about the new house we'd be moving into next month, but he just nodded absently. When dessert came, he excused himself and said he needed some fresh air. It was 10:45 p.m. I remember watching his back as he walked out of that small dining hall. Something in my chest tightened, a feeling I couldn't explain. Minutes turned to an hour, then 2. The clock struck midnight, and that's when I heard it, the sound that made my heart freeze. At first, it was faint, like footsteps on the porch outside our suite. Then came a whisper, followed by a quiet knock on the door across the hallway. Ethan's voice, soft, urgent. My body went still. Every sound in that old inn seemed to magnify the ticking clock, the wind brushing against the window, and the sound of my own heart pounding. I opened the door slightly, peeking through the hallway. The light from the sconce flickered, and in that dim glow, I saw Ethan standing outside another room. He wasn't alone. There was a woman tall, with dark hair cascading down her back. She was wearing a pale blue dress, shimmering in the light. Ethan reached out and touched her hand. She didn't pull away. My breath caught. My knees weakened. I wanted to tell myself I was dreaming, that maybe it wasn't him, that maybe there was some explanation, but deep down, I knew the truth, the kind that doesn't need words. He had left me, on our wedding night, to be with someone else. I closed the door quietly and sat on the edge of the bed. The tears wouldn't come, not yet. It felt like my whole body had gone numb. The only sound I heard was the faint chirping of crickets outside, and somewhere in the distance, a train passing through the night, the sound of something moving on. While I was standing still, I remember whispering to myself, maybe he'll come back, maybe there's a reason. But as the hours passed, and the sun began to rise over the Georgia hills, I realized some truths arrive with the dawn, and they don't wait for permission. Sometimes the truth doesn't arrive with a scream. It whispers through the cracks of the night, asking if you're strong enough to listen. Hello again, my dear friends. This is Nana, and we're continuing Clara's story, a story about love, silence, and the kind of heartbreak that changes who we become. If you're listening right now, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Now, let's go back to that cold morning in Georgia. When I woke up, the sun was already pouring through the lace curtains, lighting up the room like nothing had happened, as if the world hadn't fallen apart just a few hours earlier. Ethan wasn't there. His tuxedo jacket still hung on the chair. His shoes were gone. The ring I had placed on his finger just yesterday That simple silver band we picked together was nowhere to be seen. My hands shook as I reached for my phone. No message, no call, nothing. There's a strange kind of pain in silence. It's not the loud kind that breaks things, but the quiet kind that makes you question if you ever really knew someone at all. Mrs. Caldwell knocked gently. "Morning, dear. Breakfast's ready. Your husband went out early, said he'd be back soon." I forced a smile. "Thank you, ma'am." Inside, I wanted to scream. Back soon? He hadn't even said goodbye. I went downstairs, pretending to be calm. The smell of coffee filled the inn, but it didn't comfort me. My eyes searched the lobby, the porch, the road beyond the trees. No sign of Ethan. And then, across the street, parked under the shade of an oak, I saw it. His car. But he wasn't alone. That same woman in the blue dress was there again. She leaned against the passenger door, her head bowed like they were sharing something painful. Ethan stood close, his hand brushing against hers, and I could see it in his body language. That kind of familiarity you don't fake. They weren't strangers. They never had been. I froze in the window. My throat tightened. Every part of me wanted to run outside and demand answers, but my heart whispered, "Don't. Just watch. You need to know who she is first." A few minutes later, Ethan drove away with her. The car disappeared down the dirt road, leaving behind only dust and questions. I walked outside, barefoot on the wooden porch, staring into the distance. Mrs. Caldwell came out holding a tray of biscuits and sweet tea. "You okay, dear? You look pale." I swallowed hard. "I'm fine. I think I just need some air." She hesitated. "That man of yours seemed troubled. When you stepped away last night, he got a call. After that, he went quiet." A call. My heart thumped. From who? Hours passed. Noon came and went. Still no sign of him. I sat on the bed, looking at the framed wedding photo I'd carried in my bag, me smiling wide, him half smiling back, his eyes somewhere far away. I turned the photo face down. When evening came, I finally decided to leave the inn. I didn't know where to go, just that I couldn't sit in that room anymore, pretending I was still a bride. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. My stomach dropped as I opened it. "Clara, please don't come looking for me. I need to figure things out. I'm sorry for everything. E." That was it. No explanation. No goodbye. Just that small, cruel message that felt like a door slamming in my face. I drove back to my mother's house in silence. She opened the door, her smile fading when she saw me standing there, still in my wedding dress, wrinkled and stained from the long drive. "Clara? What happened?" "He's gone, Mom." I fell into her arms like a child. And for the first time that day, I cried the kind of crying that comes from the soul when words no longer matter. That night, I couldn't sleep. The image of that woman haunted me, her blue dress, her hand in his, the look in his eyes. Was she an old love? A secret affair? A friend? At a.m. I opened Ethan's laptop. He'd left it in the car trunk before the wedding. Maybe it was wrong, but I needed answers. There were emails, hundreds. One name kept appearing. Lydia M. The most recent message, sent the night before our wedding, read, "I can't go through with this anymore, Ethan. She doesn't deserve to be hurt, but I can't pretend we never happened." My hands trembled as I read it again. She doesn't deserve to be hurt. That she was me. In that moment, everything made sense. The strange look in his eyes at the altar, the way he avoided my touch, the midnight whispers outside the door. He hadn't just left me. He'd been in love with someone else all along. But why marry me then? Why promise forever if his heart already belonged to someone else? I didn't know it yet, but the answer to that question would come soon, and it would hurt more than I ever imagined. Because sometimes betrayal isn't about love, it's about fear. And Ethan was hiding a secret that would turn everything upside down. Some truths aren't meant to be whispered, they demand to be discovered, even if the discovery breaks us. Hello again, my dear friends. This is Nana, and thank you for staying with me as we walk through Clara's journey, a journey of love, betrayal, and the quiet strength that emerges when life turns upside down. Now, let's see what Clara discovers next. The next morning, I sat at my mother's kitchen table, the laptop open in front of me. My coffee had gone cold hours ago, but I didn't notice. All I could focus on were the emails, the messages, the traces of a life I thought I knew, a life Ethan had hidden from me. Lydia M. was everywhere in his digital life, his calendar, his contacts. I clicked through photos he had sent her, messages he'd written but never sent to me, and a journal entry he had saved under a password I'd miraculously guessed. The words on the screen made my chest tighten. I can't stop thinking about her. I hate that I married someone else, but Clara deserves better than the chaos I carry in my heart. Chaos. That's what he called it. And now I understood. He had married me while his heart belonged to someone else. The next step was impossible to avoid. I had to find Lydia. Her address was in one of the emails. A small house in a quiet neighborhood, not far from Ethan's parents. My hands shook as I held the car keys. Part of me wanted answers. Another part wanted to run away, to never face the truth. I drove through the early morning streets, Georgia's sun cutting through the trees. The house appeared as if it had grown out of the earth itself. Modest, quiet, unassuming. I rang the bell. No answer. I tried the door. Unlocked. Inside, the house smelled faintly of lavender and old books. A photo on the mantel showed Lydia smiling at a little girl, her eyes bright and warm. The realization hit me like a wave. She wasn't just someone from his past. She had a life, a family, a world that existed outside of him. And then I heard it soft sobbing from the kitchen. Lydia sat at the table, head in her hands. When she looked up, her eyes widened. Clara? Her voice was calm, almost gentle, but my heart felt as though it had been punched. I didn't know if I should scream, beg, or run, but something inside me whispered, listen first. She gestured for me to sit. I didn't want this to happen. He never told you, did he? I shook my head, unable to speak. He loves you, Clara. He truly does. But he's been fighting himself for years. Years of trying to make a life with me while knowing he couldn't. And then you came along. You were everything he wanted in a normal life, a life he thought he could finally have. He married you because he wanted to do right, even if his heart wasn't free. My stomach twisted. So, you were his. Lydia nodded. I loved him. I still do. But I didn't want to destroy your life. I stayed away. But he didn't know how to stop himself. I left her house feeling heavier than I had ever felt. Ethan's betrayal wasn't just about another woman. It was about a man who couldn't reconcile his heart with the life he thought he should live. By the time I returned to my mother's home, the sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. I stood on the porch, breathing deeply. The air smelled like autumn leaves and distant rain. I realized something crucial. My pain wasn't just about losing him. It was about losing the version of myself that believed in him completely. That version was gone, now, and I had a choice, to mourn her, or mourn him, or learn to live without both. That night, my phone buzzed again. It was Ethan. Clara, I need to explain. Can we meet? I stared at the message, the tears streaming down my face. I wanted to reply, wanted to scream, wanted to throw the phone across the room, but I didn't. Instead, I deleted it. Sometimes love isn't about reconciliation. Sometimes love is about knowing when to walk away with dignity, when to protect your heart before it shatters completely. As I climbed into bed, I thought about the life I had imagined, the life that had been taken from me before it even began. But somewhere deep inside, I felt the tiniest spark of strength. A voice whispered, "You are stronger than the heartbreak. You will rise from this, even if it takes every piece of your soul." And for the first time in what felt like forever, I believed her. Sometimes the hardest conversations reveal the deepest wounds and the strongest truths. Hello again, my dear friends. This is Nana, and thank you for staying with me as Clara's story unfolds. In this part, she finally faces Ethan, the man who promised forever, but left her in the shadows of betrayal. The next morning, I decided to face him. My hands shook as I gripped the steering wheel. I wasn't sure if I wanted answers, forgiveness, or just closure. Maybe all three, or maybe none. When I arrived at the cafe where he had asked to meet, Ethan was already there. He looked smaller somehow, like the weight of guilt had physically shrunk him. His eyes, once familiar and warm, now seemed clouded with regret and fear. He stood as I approached, awkward and hesitant. "Clara," his voice cracked, and for a second I almost faltered. Almost. I sat down across from him, keeping my hands folded tightly. "Ethan, why?" I asked, voice trembling but steady. Why lie? Why hide her from me? He swallowed hard. Clara, I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I could handle it. Thought I could bury my feelings for her and start a new life with you. I wasn't ready to let go of the past. And I didn't know how to love you properly while carrying her in my heart. My chest tightened. So your love for me, it wasn't enough? It was, he whispered. It was more than I could explain. But love isn't always enough when fear and guilt weigh you down. I thought marrying you would fix everything, but it only made the betrayal worse. I looked at him, searching for any trace of the man I had fallen in love with. I saw him there, yes, but also someone broken, someone who had made choices that no one could undo. Ethan, you promise forever, I said softly, and forever doesn't belong to those who are torn between two hearts. He nodded, tears welling in his eyes. I know, and I'm sorry, more than I can ever express. I wanted to yell, to cry, to collapse in his arms, but instead, I took a deep breath. I need to live my life without wondering what might have been. I loved you fully, Ethan, and now, I need to love myself enough to walk away. Ethan's head bowed. I don't deserve you, he murmured. Maybe not, I replied, but I deserve peace, and I can't find it with you in my heart anymore. We sat in silence, two souls who, once intertwined, now separated by truth and choice. When I left the cafe, the air felt lighter, even though my heart still ached. I realized that closure wasn't about his apologies or my forgiveness. Closure was about reclaiming my own life, my own strength, and my own heart. That evening, I returned to my mother's home and took a long walk in the nearby park. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the trees. Children laughed, couples held hands, and dogs chased balls through the grass. And I smiled, not because the pain was gone, oh no, but because I had survived it. I had faced the truth, embraced the heartbreak, and still chosen myself. I sat on a bench and whispered to the wind, I am not broken. I am not lost. I am learning slowly but surely to love again, starting with me. As the stars began to appear in the night sky, I felt a warmth in my chest, a quiet, steady reminder that life goes on, even after the darkest nights. Sometimes walking away is the bravest form of love for both yourself and the ones you leave behind. And in that moment, I knew I was ready to begin the journey of healing, even if it meant walking alone for a while. Even in the deepest sorrow, life has a way of offering gentle light when we least expect it. Hello, my dear friends. This is Nana again. Clara's story is far from over, and in this part, she begins to discover that hope can arrive in the most unexpected ways. The days after the confrontation with Ethan were heavy. I spent mornings sipping tea on the porch, staring at the same Georgian neighborhood that once felt like home, now feeling unfamiliar. Facebook moments passed me by. Couples posting pictures, friends celebrating anniversaries, life moving on while mine felt paused. I tried to distract myself with work, baking, long walks, and journaling, but the silence of my apartment was deafening. Nights were the hardest. I would lie awake, listening to the wind rustle through the blinds, remembering his touch, his promises, and the betrayal that followed. One rainy afternoon, as I walked through the small downtown bookstore, I stumbled upon a familiar voice. Clara, is that you? I looked up and saw my childhood friend, Mia. She had always been a light in my life, the kind of friend who knows your soul without you saying a word. Her smile was warm, gentle, unassuming, but in that moment, it felt like a lifeline. Mia, I whispered, almost in disbelief. She hugged me tightly, and for the first time in weeks, I felt tears slide down my cheeks without shame. It's okay to cry, she murmured. You've been carrying so much alone. We sat at a small cafe inside the bookstore, the rain tapping against the windows, and I told her everything. The wedding night, Ethan's lies, the confrontation, and the emptiness I felt now. Mia held my hand. Oh, Clara, you've been through so much, but you're still here. You're still standing, and that means you're stronger than you think. Her words were soft, yet they landed like a warm blanket over my aching heart. In the following weeks, Mia became a constant presence, not as a replacement for what I lost, but as a reminder that connection still existed. We went for long walks, tried new cafes, and even volunteered at the local animal shelter. Small joys, simple laughter, yet powerful medicine for a heart in repair. One evening, while walking home under the soft glow of streetlights, Mia said something that stayed with me. You deserve a love that chooses you every single day, Clara. But before that, you must love yourself fiercely without compromise. Her words echoed in my mind long after we parted ways that night. Slowly, I began to understand that healing wasn't about forgetting Ethan or pretending the pain didn't exist. It was about reclaiming the pieces of me that had been scattered by heartbreak. And then came the unexpected moment. An invitation to a small community event hosted at our local church. Hesitant, I attended, unsure of what to expect. But among the faces in the crowd, there was warmth, laughter, and a genuine sense of belonging I hadn't felt in months. A man named Daniel, volunteering to help with the event, noticed my quiet presence and struck up a conversation. Not flirty, not rushed, just human. We talked about books, childhood memories, the weather, and eventually life's challenges. I felt a spark not of romantic love yet, but of connection, understanding, and trust. It reminded me that life was full of layers, pain and hope, sorrow and joy, endings and beginnings all existing simultaneously. That night, as I walked home, I paused under a street lamp and let the rain wash over me. I whispered to myself, I am still learning, I am still growing, and yes, my heart will open again. In its own time, for the first time in months, I felt a quiet excitement for tomorrow, not because I had all the answers, but because I finally understood that happiness could return, piece by piece, even after betrayal. Sometimes the first step toward healing isn't grand. It's simply showing up, letting the sun touch your face, and allowing yourself to feel life again. Life doesn't promise a smooth journey, but it does promise moments that remind us why it's worth staying. Healing doesn't happen overnight. It's built in small steps, quiet moments, and the courage to keep moving forward. Hello, my dear friends, Nana here. Clara's journey is slowly turning a page. She is learning that the strength to move forward comes not from forgetting the past, but from embracing her own power. After that rainy evening with Daniel at the community event, Clara felt a subtle shift within herself. She realized that she had spent so much time chasing someone else's love and approval that she had neglected her own needs, her own voice. She started small, morning walks in the neighborhood, journaling her thoughts, and cooking meals that reminded her of home. Georgia mornings, with sunlight streaming through the kitchen window, slowly became a sacred ritual. Every sip of coffee felt like reclaiming a piece of herself. One Saturday, Clara signed up for a local art class painting landscapes, something she hadn't done since childhood. At first, she felt awkward, her hands uncertain, but as she dipped the brush into paint, the colors seemed to mirror her emotions, the stormy blues of sadness, the warm yellows of hope, and the quiet greens of healing. I didn't realize how much I'd forgotten how to create for myself, she whispered, stepping back to view her canvas. Through painting, Clara rediscovered a part of her soul that had been buried under grief. Each brushstroke reminded her she was capable, she was creative, and she was worthy of joy again. Mia continued to be her anchor, cheering her on through every small victory. One evening, they sat on Clara's porch, sipping chamomile tea, watching the sunset paint the sky. You've changed, Mia said softly, not because you stopped feeling, but because you started feeling for yourself. Clara smiled, a genuine warmth spreading in her chest. I'm learning to trust myself again, to set boundaries, to say no, and to say yes when it truly matters. As weeks turned into months, Clara's confidence grew. She found herself laughing more freely, reconnecting with old friends, and even enjoying simple trips around town without the shadow of the past following her. Then came another unexpected moment. Daniel reached out again, not with pressure, but with patience. He invited her to join a local book club he was part of. Clara agreed, not because she sought romance, but because she wanted to engage with life, curiosity, and community. In the book club, she met diverse people with unique stories, and she realized something profound. Every person carries scars, yet everyone also carries resilience. Listening to their stories, sharing her own, Clara felt less isolated and more connected to the tapestry of human experience. One evening, walking home after a lively discussion about courage and personal growth, Clara felt a gentle sense of accomplishment, not because life had magically healed her, but because she had chosen to face it with integrity, grace, and determination. She whispered to the night sky, I am learning to honor my heart, no matter how fragile it feels. I am learning to embrace life fully, even when it scares me. It was in these quiet, reflective moments that Clara realized the most important love she could ever cultivate was the one she held for herself. Only from that foundation could she rebuild a life of strength, purpose, and true connection. Even after heartbreak, life whispers possibilities. Even after betrayal, the heart can open again, cautiously, yes, but with an enduring willingness to trust, to hope, and to love in a way that is authentically yours. Healing is not forgetting. Healing is rediscovering your courage, your joy, and your capacity to dream once more. Sometimes the universe nudges us in ways we never expect, opening doors we didn't even know were there. Hello, my dear friends, Nana here. Clara's journey is about to take a pivotal turn. She has been healing, learning, and slowly reclaiming her life. But life, as it often does, had a surprise waiting, one that would test her newfound strength and reshape her future. One late autumn afternoon, Clara received a message from a local charity organization. They were hosting a mentorship program for young women who had faced hardships in their families and relationships. Something inside her stirred. The part of her that had once felt helpless now felt a responsibility to help others find hope. Maybe I can make a difference, she thought quietly. She applied and was accepted. On her first day, she met women from all walks of life, each with a story of struggle and courage. Clara felt a deep sense of belonging, as if her experiences had prepared her to guide, comfort, and inspire others. At the mentorship program, she shared her own story, the heartbreak, the loneliness, the betrayal, and the slow, deliberate journey toward healing. And as she spoke, she noticed something remarkable. The women listened with rapt attention, nodding, some with tears, some with smiles. Her vulnerability became a bridge, connecting her to others in ways she had never imagined. "You're stronger than you think," she whispered to them, echoing the words she now whispered to herself every morning. Meanwhile, Daniel continued to be present in her life, but differently now. Not as someone who demanded her attention or affection, but as a person who had learned respect and patience. They met occasionally for coffee or at community events, and Clara realized that what had once been longing and confusion was now clarity and choice. She didn't feel anger anymore, not the raw, consuming kind. Instead, she felt acceptance. Acceptance that some chapters are meant to end, not as punishment, but as lessons. One evening, Clara received a message from a young woman she had mentored. A simple thank you for showing her that life could still be kind after pain. That moment crystallized something inside Clara. Her life had purpose beyond what she had imagined. "It's not about what's been taken from me," she said softly, looking at the night sky from her porch. "It's about what I choose to give back." As winter approached, Clara's home became a warm haven. She hosted small gatherings, taught painting classes for charity, and shared meals with neighbors. Her laughter echoed through the halls in a way it hadn't in years. One night, after a long day at the mentorship program, she sat quietly with her journal. She wrote about every fear, every regret, and every lesson learned. And then she wrote something that surprised even her. "I am ready to love again, but this time, I will love wisely, gently, and without losing myself." It was a turning point. Clara understood that life would always have uncertainties, that heartbreak could return in some form. But now she had the tools to face it with courage. Her heart was no longer fragile in fear, it was resilient in hope. Clara realized the ultimate lesson. The most profound love story she would ever experience was not one written by someone else, but one authored by herself. Each choice, each act of kindness, each small victory became a testament to her strength, her grace, and her unwavering spirit. Sometimes the hardest paths lead to the most beautiful destinations. Sometimes the love we find is the love we give ourselves. And with that understanding, Clara felt a quiet, powerful joy settle in her heart. Not the kind born of perfect circumstances, but the kind born of survival, growth, and the unshakable belief in life's possibilities. Life isn't about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning to dance in the rain. Hello, my dear friends, Nana here. We've followed Clara through heartbreak, betrayal, and loneliness. And now, we arrive at the part of her story where hope blooms fully, not as a fleeting feeling, but as a way of life. As spring approached, Clara's life felt lighter. Her home, once heavy with silence, now resonated with laughter, music, and the aroma of home-cooked meals. She had built routines that nourished her soul. Morning walks through her neighborhood, Sunday brunches with friends, and evenings spent journaling on her porch. One particular morning, Clara received a message that made her pause. An invitation to speak at a community event for women overcoming adversity. She felt a flutter of nerves, but also excitement. Sharing her journey publicly was a step beyond what she had ever imagined. Maybe my story can light the path for someone else, she thought. On the day of the event, Clara stood in front of an audience filled with eager faces, all seeking hope. She spoke about betrayal, about nights of tears and mornings of doubt, but also about the resilience she discovered within herself. She spoke with honesty, compassion, and warmth. By the time she finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. She realized that her pain, once isolating, had become a bridge to connection, understanding, and inspiration. Later that evening, as Clara walked home under the soft glow of streetlights, she felt a sense of completeness she had never known. Daniel had reached out once more, but this time, their connection was grounded in respect and mutual understanding. There were no demands, no lingering resentment, only acknowledgement of shared history and personal growth. Clara knew that her heart was open once again, not out of desperation or need, but out of choice. She was ready to love, fully and wisely, with the understanding that her peace and self-respect came first. I will never settle for less than what nurtures my soul, she whispered, feeling the cool breeze on her face. Clara's journey taught her invaluable lessons. That betrayal does not define a person, that silence can teach powerful truths, and that the courage to heal comes from within. Most importantly, she learned that the love she gives herself sets the standard for every relationship she will have in the future. Her story, once shadowed by heartbreak, now shone with light. She had transformed pain into purpose, loneliness into connection, and doubt into strength. Sometimes life closes doors to protect us, and sometimes it opens them to lead us home, to ourselves, she thought, smiling softly. As Nana, I've shared Clara's journey with you, my dear friends, because it reminds us all, even in the darkest nights, hope can be found. And the most profound love story we will ever live is the one we write for ourselves, with courage, kindness, and an unwavering heart. Clara's story ends not with sorrow, but with strength, joy, and the quiet confidence of someone who knows her worth. She stands ready to face life's surprises, armed with resilience and the gentle power of a healed heart. Thank you, my dear friends, for walking this journey with me today. May you find courage in your struggles, and may your hearts always remember, the love you give yourself is the love that lasts.